I want to start by apologizing. My throat's kind of sore. I choked on something when I read the article in the Macomb Daily a couple weeks ago about Brian getting that position. And with all the partying, grieving over the last couple of weeks, it hasn't been able to heal.
Gosh, I think about the first time I met Brian, and I think to myself, it's just so disappointing to meet someone you thought you would actually like.
Brian's got a very difficult job to do with being budget director, and saying no is it's not as easy as you may think. He's very good at it.
I wouldn't necessarily say Brian was free with the budget. I'd say it was probably the exact opposite of that.
So my first day of work, I started in June of 2007, and I came in, and Sue Woodward was my management assistant at the time, and she said, well, it's almost the end of the fiscal year, so we have no money for supplies. I said, okay, well, what does that mean? She goes, we have no money for supplies. So in my first week working at the Sterling Heights Library, we could not buy rubber bands. So that's how strict Brian is with the money.
I go into budget, got all my numbers, in charge of a lot of different divisions, so on and so forth, put a lot of time into it, and we're going through fleet, we're going through refuse, and we get to water and sewer, got all my numbers ready. He's like, no, I'll handle that. And I don't even have a chance to even look at what I'm going to get for the budget. I'm just told what I'm going to get. So I never had 2 years ago an opportunity to say what I'm going to get for my budget numbers for my own department. I just find out what the hell they are.
And speaking of the budget process, it's kind of funny because everything's always got the same answer for Brian when he's talking to the fire department. It's, well, put in for it with the AFG grant. Like he tells the police department to get it under drug forfeiture. He tells DPW, get it under water and sewer. So after about 7 years of getting denied by the AFG grant process, then he even considers us purchasing the thing we needed 7 years ago.
We have a capital meeting last year, and we're going for a piece of equipment. It's a camera specifically, and he's not buying it. I keep pushing it. And finally Brian says, okay, well, put in for your operating budget. You had given me a phone call that you needed another employee. So put it in with the employee and the piece of equipment. And I'm sitting there questioning myself like, okay, so all right, so we get to operating budget. What happens? Don't get the employee, don't get the equipment. So here we are a year later, which is just recently. I'm asking for the same piece of equipment again. And this guy, he says, well, I don't know. Why don't you put in for it for your operating budget again? Give me a break.
So now I'm in my 5th budget cycle. I think I get to know what's going on, and the rules always seem to change. Like when we meet for capital, Brian will say, well, you should really put in for that for operations. It's more of an operational thing. Then a month later, when you put in for operations, he denies it and says, you should have put that in for capital. And then he waits about 11 months and thinks you're going to forget about it. And realistically, it works for a couple years, but now I'm on to him. So, this budget year, I didn't let him win that one over on me. But, it's always interesting to see him change the way things work, just to suit him.
In his role as budget director over the last 28 years, he's encountered a lot of challenges, not only externally with market conditions and the ability to tax via property taxes, but also internal constraints relative to people wanting everything from soup to nuts that has to go through the budget director in order to get funded.
When my phone rings and I see 2302,
We struggle, we plead our case, try and give them puppy dog eyes, and it just doesn't work.
And again, to his credit, he was able to weigh all the priorities of the organization. Albeit not everyone's priorities, but organizationally, he always did a good job of making sure the priorities of the city were met.
Sometimes Brian had to try to work departments against each other to get money so he could balance his overall budget, which didn't seem very fair to me.
Whenever Brian is, in the director's meeting, and it's odd because generally people who wear their glasses like this use them when they look down, but he's looking at you over his glasses and yet reads his paper over his glasses. So I'm not sure if it's, some kind of slick move to look intelligent, but I'm not fooled. I don't know if the other staff is, but I know that, things like that I'm not fooled by.
So one thing I'm gonna miss about Brian is his sense of humor. He's got that dry sense of humor and that dull affect. And when we're in a group of people, he actually makes me seem a lot funnier than I really am, and I need all the help that I can get.
When I first started, Jim, Bielinger, Brian, and Don Demick and I would go to lunch sometimes, and I don't know that Brian ever picked up that check.
Well, I'll say one thing. I have taken one good piece of information from Brian Baker my entire career here, is to do the credit card deal. You get the bonus points, you take the bonuses, you cancel the credit card, you move on to the next credit card. That's probably the only good piece of information I've ever gotten from Brian, matter of fact.
So in closing, Brian, you probably have about 200 voicemails from me over the last year while you were out campaigning for your new job and haven't really been doing your job here. But don't worry about getting to them. I'm sure Jennifer will be able to answer my questions probably a lot more appropriate than you would have.
He is a tough guy, but we'll miss him a lot. I'll miss him a lot. He does a really good job for the city, and I know he's looking out for all of us, but I really want him to take pity on the library. So hopefully his replacement will be kinder and gentler to the library.
So Brian, it's sad to see you go, but Jennifer, it's time to make it rain up in here.
You better give me that money.
Don't worry, Brian. I've got this.
How rich can you get?